I am Coach Vikkie, and today we are going back to the foundation of this entire series. What does the Bible actually say about finding a spouse? Because I think a lot of us have observed Christian dating culture's opinions without ever really studying what scripture itself says. I want to walk you through this carefully because I think you'll be surprised by some of what we find, both what's clearly there and what is actually cultural assumption rather than biblical mandates. So let's start with Genesis because that is where the foundational pattern is set. Genesis 2 verse 18 says, "It is not good for man to be alone. I will make a helper suitable for him." I want you to notice something here. The initiative is God's. God identifies the need and God creates the solution. Adam, didn't go through searching through the garden, conducting interview, come and talk. God brought Eve to him, and this does not mean you should sit at home doing nothing and expect God to physically deliver somebody to your doorstep. We will talk about partnership with God's process in a later episode, but it does establish something important. Finding a spouse biblically is fundamentally framed as something God is actively involved in, not just a human project you execute alone. Let's look at Proverbs next, because Proverbs gives us the clearest practical wisdom about character. Proverbs 31 describes a wife of noble character, and notice what it emphasizes is not her appearance primarily. Though she's described as lovely, it emphasizes her wisdom, her work ethic, her generosity, her fear of the Lord. Proverbs 31 verse 30 especially says, "Charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised." For the men in my audience and for women evaluating men, similar principles apply from other passages. 1 Timothy and Titus, when discussing qualifications for leadership, gives us a window into character qualities that matter: self-control, hospitality, gentleness, not quick-tempered, not a lover of money. While these were written specifically about church leaders, the character qualities described reflect what scripture consistently values in a person's life, regardless of role. Now, here is something I think is really important and often overlooked. The Bible does not give us a specific formula for how to find the one, because there is no verse, absolutely no verse, that says, "And you shall pray 17 times and receive a vision." So what the Bible actually gives us instead is wisdom, literature about character and about the nature of love, about what relationships healthy or destructive. 1 Corinthians 13, the love chapter, is probably the single most practical passage for relationship discernment in all scripture. Read it not as a wedding reading, but as a checklist. Love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, keeps no record of wrongs. I want you to actually go through that passage about the person you are currently considering replacing love with in their name. Right? Just call the person's name. So let's say Bolaji. Does Bolaji consistently show patience? Does Bolaji keep a record of wrongs against you? This passage becomes incredibly practical when you stop reading it as a poetry and start reading it as evaluation criteria. Let's talk about 2 Corinthians 6 verse 14. "Do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers." This is one of the clearest, most direct instructions in scripture about who you should and shouldn't pursue a relationship with. I want to be honest, this verse gets weaponized sometimes in unhelpful ways, used to justify all kinds of incompatible matches as long as both people technically identify as Christian. But the principles is clear. Shared spiritual foundation matters profoundly for the health of a marriage. You cannot build a life together if you're not actually walking the same spiritual direction. Now, something I think is very crucial to address. The Bible doesn't promise everyone will marry, and it doesn't rank marriage as a superior spiritual state to singleness. 1 Corinthians 7 is very clear about this. Paul actually expresses a preference for singleness in some contexts for the sake of undivided devotion to the Lord. This passage should free those of you who feel like singleness means you are somehow failing or being punished, because scripture doesn't support that framing at all. What this practically means for your search is that it means you can partner actively with God in pursuing healthy relationships, going to community, being open, putting yourself in positions to meet people of faith without believing you are somehow circumventing God's sovereignty by being intentional. And it means that character should be your primary evaluation criteria, far above charm, attractiveness, or even surface level compatibility. It means shared spiritual foundation isn't. What does this mean practically for yourself? It means you can partner actively with God in pursuing healthy relationship, going to community, being open, putting yourself in position to meet people of faith without believing that you are somehow circumventing respecting God's sovereignty by being intentional. It means character should be your primary evaluation criteria, far above charm, attractiveness, or even surface level compatibility. It means shared spiritual foundation isn't optional or negotiable. It is explicitly addressed in scripture as essential, and it means 1 Corinthians 13 should become your evaluation tool, not just your wedding verse. And it means your worth and spiritual standing are not dependent on your marital status. Singleness is not a holding pattern or a lesser state. Scripture treats it as, a legitimate, sometimes even preferable calling. I encourage you this week to actually sit down with these passages yourself. Genesis 2, Proverbs 31, 1 Corinthians 13, 2 Corinthians 6 verse 14, and 1 Corinthians 7 most importantly. And read them slowly, asking God to show you that what applies specifically to your current season. Next week, we are talking about something practical. Are you actually praying for the right thing when you pray for the one? I think you'll find that episode reframes how you have been approaching prayer about this topic. I am Coach Vikkie. Subscribe, share this with someone who needs real biblical grounding instead of just cultural Christian dating advice. This is Relationship Talks with Vikkie. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like. Don't forget to share, like I've said before. And most importantly, don't forget to actually watch these videos with your loved ones. I love you, and I'll see you on the next episode.